Well, hello, everybody. Let's see if this thing's on. Testing, testing, one, two, three. Okay. Well, my name is Majisty, and I am the host of the Somebody Should Have Told Me podcast. And I am here to tell you everything that you wish somebody should have told you about your convictions, your career, and your coins. And today is actually going to be the first installment of our Surviving Purity Culture series, and I am so excited about it. And I just once again had to stop what I'm doing and come and talk to you. And so you guys know I'm normally use my computer for my notes. I am doing notes from my phone. So part of me as I go back and forth because we have a lot of things to get into today. So, first installment on the Surviving Purity Culture series, and I'm so excited because we have, I'm saying we, and by we, I mean us. You and me are we together, okay? So, just a couple of quick notes for, social media has gotten extremely sensitive with the algorithm. We have to talk about some grown woman things, okay? So, number one, this podcast is not for your children. And number two, I am going to use different language that is probably aside from what is anatomically correct, just so that I don't get banned or demonetized in the future, whatever the case may be. So we're just going to go ahead and set ourselves up for success now. So now that that's out the way, you know what to anticipate. Okay, so for me, I am always curious about when it comes to relationships, when it comes to love and marriage, what is the disconnect between men and women in the church, okay? And so more recently throughout my process of just re-examining my life, my dating efforts and all of those things, I have decided to have a dating life. It sounds so funny, but here we go. Just stay with me, okay? I have decided to have a dating life that is outside of the church, okay? Because I just really feel like if I was supposed to meet my husband at any particular church service, it would have happened by now. You guys, if I had probably $1 for every minute that I spent in church, I would be a multi millionaire. Okay? So how about that? Now, the reason I need to say that because the girlies that get it, because pretty much any activity that you do outside of church, at least it was the way when I was growing up, it's pretty much demonized. You don't go out anything, outside of church, praise dance and all of these things is like vain activity, and depending on how you're set up, you deeply internalize things like only what you do for Christ will last. And sometimes, and I'm not saying that that is not so, I'm not saying that your spiritual activities are not, most valuable eternally, because they are. But if you don't have a balanced perspective, you will lean one way that doesn't allow for you to have a balanced life, okay? So essentially, I now have a more robust and full life outside of church, which I thoroughly enjoy. I feel like I have a thriving dating life because I stopped looking to the church to bring me a man. And before you look at me crazy, many pastors preached that the Lord was going to send your husband to the house of God. So don't even get me started on that. Okay. Now, if that's how God is moving in your life, that is wonderful. I am so glad for you. Keep it up. Do all those things. I'm just talking about me, myself, personally, and the things that somebody should have told me. And if you need to hear some things that somebody should have told me, here we are. So now that I've kind of stepped outside of having church be like my entire world, don't get me wrong, I absolutely still love and enjoy church, but I understand what it is for. Um, I often look back in hindsight on what the disconnect is between how men and women relate, because even in some churches, and it kind of leans a little bit cultish, right? um that there are still some churches, that's Christian churches, okay, that separate where the men sit versus the women sit. We're not even going to get into women not being admitted into the pulpit. But then beyond talking about the call of God on a woman's life, I really want to dive into the platonic interactions, because when you look at things, it's like everybody is scared of everybody. It's like the women don't want to be perceived as lustful or not focused on God. And then the men, I don't know really all of what they be thinking, but I think I have a clue today. And it just makes for a greater divide. Okay. So, notes. I just finished reading The Great Sex Rescue by Sheila Gregoire. I hope I am not jacking her name up. This woman is a genius, okay? So she has a book. It's called The Great Sex Rescue: The Lies You've Been Taught and How to Recover What God Intended. Excuse me. And I think this book does exactly that. So I want to go through a few of my takeaways of the book and some of the realizations that I've had in my own life after finishing this book. I was so excited. I really wanted to do this episode yesterday, but nonetheless, here we are. So, essentially, at its core, there was a lot of incorrect evangelical messaging, okay? And I think when you look at purity culture as a whole, I feel like, if you ask me, it really started in the evangelical church and kind of trickled its way onto the Black church, okay? Especially when I look at resources that I was internalizing from my experience with purity culture, it was from the evangelical church. Here's the thing. Also, I think too, as some of you all are being newly introduced to the purity culture and hearing some of my things that I'm posting on social media, you are unfamiliar what purity culture is. And I want to be abundantly clear, because a lot of people go through disentangling processes, and they don't tell you where they land. And not that I owe anyone where I land, but I think it is important so you can hear the totality of what I'm saying. Purity culture is not something that's necessarily against abstinence. I believe abstinence is important, but there are so many things that came around abstinence that I am 100% sure that God did not intend. Okay. So, in addition to, so purity culture just kind of has like this hyper modesty environment, to the point where basically any feminine expression is almost like you're leading men to stumble. It gets very invasive on the boundaries that a woman and couples should have, as they are deciding what the boundaries will be for them romantically. Several movements advise women not to kiss until their wedding day. Several movements were very much so against the expression of affection in any way. They led a lot of women to believe that you have to know who your husband is before dating, and truthfully created a lot of disillusionment amongst women. And so you have women who are, and I speak to women because that's where I've in times past spent the most time around. And so you have women who are feeling like they have these prophetic unctions, and then they're not engaging in their due diligence. They don't know how to assess character. And then abstinence is the only qualifier for whether or not they will continue to engage with the man, and then leaving women not to know how to vet during that process anything else. Okay, so when I am talking about purity culture, I am not saying that I am against abstinence. I think abstinence is a wise thing. I also don't believe in maintaining a fear-based abstinence. I think you should really take time to prayerfully consider and sit with God on why you are on your abstinence journey. Is it something that you are trying to prove to other people how saved you are? Or is it something that you are using as a mechanism of sobriety for you to clearly evaluate the dating prospects that are before you? I would really challenge you to look into that. In addition to that, so no fear-based reasoning. That's kind of where I stand on things. Um, hmm. Additionally, I think the biggest fault with purity culture, and I've touched on this before, is that it spoke to women in a way that made them feel that they could not be redeemed if they were to have sex outside of marriage. It put the complete value of a woman on whether or not she has had sex, and it tended to be very one-sided. And so when I'm speaking to purity culture, that is the basis of what I am speaking to. I think that something else I was going to say. What was it, Lord? Dang it. Okay, if I remember it, I'm going to come back to it. Nonetheless, so when I say purity culture, that is what I'm talking about. I am not saying that you shouldn't be abstinence. I believe that you should use wisdom in all the things that you do. Should you, heavy in the quotations, fall short and decide to have sex outside of marriage, I believe you can be redeemed. I believe God can forgive you of anything. And I think the problem with purity culture messaging is it left a lot of women stuck. Like this is the one unforgivable sin, and that is not scripturally aligned. So as we go into this series, or as you see me post different things, or as you see me say purity culture dropout, you will now know what that means. And so for me, it is important that as I decide how I'm going to navigate those things, that that's something that is between me and the Lord. And it's not something that I'm doing to prove to other people. The other thing that I now remember that I was going to say is that I believe that abstinence should not be used as something that you are doing to manipulate or accelerate the hand of God. When you do something like that, I think you're really getting into works. I think that when you start to feel like you have to fast for a husband, if you start to feel like you have to fast to get someone to like you, pay attention to you, date you, and all of these things, it undermines the premise of our salvation, which is for God so loved the world. Like the basis of our relationship with God should be love-based and not sin-based. And so the purity culture movement skewed there and has a lot of women trying to earn a husband, earn a love life, or prove that they are morally sound enough to be able to engage in relationships. And that is what I am speaking to when I have talked about the infantilization of Black Christian women in the church. And the girlies are really out here messed up because of that. And so that is a major motivation as to why I wanted to speak out about that, because I think a lot of people see a vast change in my journey, a vast change in how I present myself. And I think that people are curious about that and curious about that journey and what it looks like for them. So now that we got that, I think I could get into the book. If you are audio listening, excuse me, I am having to take brief water breaks. So if you hear a momentary pause, that's what that is. Okay. So, The Great Sex Rescue. So, the premise of this book is that she has conducted a survey of 20,000 evangelical Christian women. Okay. Another thing I want to say is I think that it is important to highlight cultural differences as we explore how communities of women have been affected by purity culture. And so Sheila Gregoire is white, but I believe for so many reasons beyond this, but one of the things that is important to look at is because I feel like this movement kind of started in the evangelical church and trickled its way over, that hearing their insights on a movement that they kind of spearheaded, at least, excuse me, at least in my life and how I related to it, I think that opinion, her inside experience is astronomically valuable in the research that they have found. And so as we talk about that, I am also going to give you a spin for the girls because we know what we know over here. So, I just wanted to put that out there. And when I'm talking about how I was introduced by purity culture, one of like the teachings that I literally went through a 16-week course before I had my purity ceremony, which was much like a wedding. Walked down the aisle, vowed true love waits. The teaching that we did was based off of Joshua Harris's I Kiss Dating Goodbye book. He has since come out and recanted a lot of the things that he said in this book, just kind of expressing how he feels like he kind of missed the heart of God on several of the things he's teaching. He's gone pretty far, I think, in his Christian beliefs, but he did, I think, try to undo, some of the harm that came with that book. So there's that. Okay, so back to Sheila. Sheila conducts this study of 20,000 evangelical women, and then goes through this rigorous vetting process of what they believe certain definitions meant. And she even examines where these women got their messaging from. And so when she looked at all of these women, a lot of them were saying that they didn't necessarily receive this messaging from the pulpit, but they got the messaging from a lot of the evangelical resources, books, radio stations, and different broadcasts and additional classes that were taking place in their church. And so I think that is important to highlight, okay? Whew. So, first of all, the thing that absolutely pushed my wig back was this. I think because I am a single woman, I think I thought purity culture only affects single people. I think I thought that the ideologies of of purity culture only translate to the single woman. I believe that purity culture ideologies keep women single longer than what they want to be. Now, mind you, for me, myself personally, I am just now coming out of purity culture for sure, like really, probably 2021. I didn't take off my purity ring until 2021. So I think there's nothing wrong with being single as long as you want to be. But I do feel like purity culture put me in a rat race. And it was kind of like a dangling carrot until I had literally like done all of the things that every, messaging should say that I should have done. And so I had a lot of frustration just feeling like, well, purity culture really set me back, and all of these things. And there are some things that, maybe even a teenager may know that I'm just now learning and catching on to certain things just because I'm literally just now starting to date over the last 3 years, like really, really date for sure. But yesterday, I learned some things. And I learned that Okay, do y'all remember analogies? Okay, when you were in school, purity culture does not stop with single women. There are women who, evangelical women, who are still equally as submersed in purity culture, even though they are married to the same extent that a single woman would. Okay. So in the book, Sheila Gregoire talks about these women who are going through these experiences where their husbands feel like they have biblical grounds to here comes the words, that feel like they have biblical grounds to assault them in their marriage bed against their will, under scriptural context of not depriving one another and all of these things. So Sheila is talking heavy in this book. And so she really gets into the nuts and bolts of different, like, high selling, mass performing books that, you know, kind of just went throughout the evangelical church. And she goes theologically through these flaws and basically tries to scripturally reconcile them to the heart of God, while simultaneously advocating for the autonomy, respect, and love of women. And then she also gets into some tactical things because, mind you, purity culture really, like, maintains this level of ignorance as though it's a moral high ground. So you have women who are going from absolutely nothing, no kissing, no touching, no holding hands, no nothing, to 100% married women and don't have a clue. And then everything that they are doing within their marital bed dealings are really coming at them um, from their husbands, many times against their will. So she talks about how these ideologies were perpetuated through a very popular book called Love and Respect. I forget who it's by. Essentially, the ultimate flaw was one of the flaws with Love and Respect is that it doesn't communicate that the marriage bed, here goes one of our words, okay, is for women too. And that when it comes to the marriage bed, that husbands have a need that women do not have. And then she goes on to talk about other books, how it is dismissive of women's needs for what's the word? Not marital, medical, medical help and medical attention after experiencing postpartum depression after childbirth. Like, it really goes that deep, okay? So I would say, for an analogy's sake, that I Kiss Dating Goodbye is to singles what Love and Respect is to marriage couples as it pertains to purity culture as a whole. And when I tell you, y'all, I was just flabbergasted that purity culture was not just restricted to single women. Like, I think that was my most, like, shocking moment over the course of, like, reading this book. And I had this guy that I was dating, and he was telling me, he was looking at my Instagram. If you look at my Instagram, you could probably see it if you look back far enough. He was saying, I noticed a change in you in your social media and how you present yourself. He said it almost looks like there is a distinct line. And there is a very distinct line. That very distinct line is like 2020, 2021, that time that we were in lockdown, and me not being in church, having time to reflect and sit with God on the things that I needed to be doing for my walk. So there's definitely a direct line, and so we're getting into that with the podcast. But along that time where I really changed how I presented myself, one of my friends called me. She's married. She was married. She abstained until marriage. And she called me and she said, I need to be with you. And she said, I need to come and I need to spend some time with you, and I need to do what you're doing. Now, at that time, I was so early on in this process that I said okay, but I was thinking to myself, like, what does she need to do with me? Because she's the married one. And so at that time in my mind, I'm like, well, you're married, girl. You got the keys. You're the one that knows something I don't know. Now, all of these years later, I understand exactly what she was saying. And I think that by saying I need to be with you and I need to do what you're doing, she was trying to ask me how she could find her femininity and her sensuality for herself. And I think we are taught like this, the light switch myth, that because once you become married, all of a sudden your sensuality will suddenly become awakened, immediately upon marriage, um, just because you're married, even though it has been repressed. And this is the thing I'm also noticing, is that this is also the thing that earlier that I said that I was trying to remember what I was saying. I now remember it, and I'm about to tell you it. When you reflect on why you are abstaining, a lot of people, when you look at using abstinence or quote unquote the weight to manipulate or accelerate the hand of God, or to qualify yourself for this blessing, and ultimately what you're trying to do is to qualify yourself with love, which I know God has so much higher for his daughters than to feel like you have to do something like that. But after extended periods of time, that is what is happening. Okay? So, that's one thing I wanted to say about that. Let's see. Okay. So back to the book thing. Y'all, I think I would have fell out if I wasn't already sitting down. She gets into the flaws with the book Every Man's Battle, okay? And basically Every Man's Battle, long story short, is about lust, okay? And as you're talking about lust, and then ultimately pornography. And so she does surveys with she does these surveys with like secular men and what they think about Christian ideologies. And essentially she was talking about how her husband and different folks that they knew felt like the messaging of Every Man's Battle talked to them like they were a monster ready to unleash, okay? And she talks about how in Every Man's Battle he gives the author talks about teaching men to bounce their eyes. And so essentially it makes men have this retreat, like they can't even look at you because somehow you will be causing them to stumble. Okay. So this is the part where I feel like there was a direct line for me. Okay. Because originally, I'm born and raised in Washington State, very vast weather difference. And we're not even going to talk about global warming. Okay. It is super hot here in Dallas, Texas, Houston, Texas, any kind of Texas, whatever you want to look at it, is hot. Okay. And so what happened for me is I found a special bra lady that specializes in fuller breast sizes, like does these custom sizing and all of these things, and found strapless bra, which is a miraculous experience for a girl like me. Okay. And I'm gonna just leave that right there. So I started wearing like cold shoulder outfits, and I think that was it for me, like at the time. And I had already like grown up like in the like knee length skirts, and that was a whole thing. And and even like way back in the days, like no pants at church and all of these things. And I think as time, it just seemed like more and more rules were being added to the list. Like, okay, you can't wear skirts this length, or you can't wear shorts. And I'm like, people who are making these rules can't live in Texas, okay? Because as I'm gonna save that part. If you aren't experiencing the weather here, you don't know, okay? And that's just that on that. But I remember someone saying to me, you can't wear your shoulders out because you're supposed to be saved. Y'all, I said to myself, I probably said it out loud that day, when did shoulders get added to the list of sin? And I think people falsely assume, like a man will falsely assume, like if he is attracted to you, that is a guaranteed invitation to my body, right? Because I think when it comes to modesty with women, people love to throw around, don't cause anyone to stumble. I'm here to ask you, who said you could stumble with me? The people want to know. Who is nobody for 300, Alex? And what my line was, when it was like a vast difference on how I started to present myself, is I started worrying absolutely zero about the optics and what it is between me and God. And I stopped letting people put their rules and what their standards are. And now I really believe it just comes down to a matter of conviction and comfortability on how I present myself. And I realized that, and she talks about this being an error with the book with For Every Man's Battle as well, is that it's not just how you dress, right? It's not just whether or not you wear turtlenecks or, spaghetti straps, or the length of your shorts and all of these things. I'm noticing that a person's attraction is as unique as they are, and it's different things with different people. So I remember one guy, he used to always DM me and be like he had a feet thing, okay? He had a feet thing. And if I'm trying to make myself responsible within my own body for someone else's temptation, which the Bible says you're tempted by your own desires, and so you are responsible for your temptations, not me, then I wouldn't wear sandals. So now what? That's just not going to work for me in this hot weather, okay? Then I had a guy who was like, your voice really does it for me. That's fine. But if I start trying to take responsibility for your lust and your attraction, then I just won't talk. Now I'm back to my mom days. So I want women to stop feeling like you are the thorn in men's side, like you have to hold them accountable, like for their salvation. I don't think you need to hold that. And so I think when you stop holding that, it gives you more of a freedom to tap into your sensuality, however you decide to express that, for yourself. And I really love that she talked about that, because she was saying what I realized just a few years ago, is that when men keep doing this, or, you feel like you have theological grounds to put all that weight on a woman that way, ultimately the problem is not your clothes. And you start to realize that these men have a problem with your body. And so I shed myself of that pressure, because I'm like, if you could only realize how much people, men in general, try to over sensualize Black women anyway, just for literally being, okay? Like, then you will realize you're running around in circles. So love that. One of the other unique things that she talks about was the interesting perspective between Abraham and Hagar. And when I tell you, this lady, Sheila Gregoire, get her book, okay? Because within this series, this Surviving Purity Culture series, we are going to uncover some deep things, but I don't just want to leave you open. I want to leave you with some resources and some things that you can really have to kind of guide you responsibly along this journey. So this is the whole world. There are therapists that specialize in this, like purity culture recovery, this religious trauma recovery, all of these things. There's a special lane for this, and I encourage you to tap in. I think you can gain a lot of information even from this book alone. So definitely check this book, read it, get the Audible, do something, follow her on Instagram, and she's just amazing. Okay. So Abraham and Hagar, she really told the story from Hagar's perspective, because I think so many times Ishmael like really gets discarded, and like he's not the promised one. And he talks about how the Bible doesn't express that Hagar had given consent to have this child, and so she was a slave and kind of did whatever. And even when she did whatever, when Sarah had her baby, they put her on the street. And the way she said it, I just realized poor Hagar was really a single mother out here, just like on the streets, left in the dust, because now Abraham got another baby on the way. Have you ever thought about that? That is crazy. Like, and the fact that this was Sarah's idea, are you serious? That is wild to me. And you never think about Hagar's story, because we're always looking at it like, okay, Ishmael wasn't the promise. You know, you don't want no Ishmael. First of all, this is a woman and her son. Okay, so kill that right there. But she talks about how Hagar was the only woman in scripture who had the privilege of giving God a name, and how she named God the God who sees me. And she was essentially tying that story back to the importance of a woman and her need to be seen in whatever relationship that she is in. And I said, Sheila, you did your big one. You are welcome on this podcast anytime to come and talk to us. Also, with this book, this is not an ad. I just really want you guys to read it, go check it out, because this is amazing. So lastly, in closing, I will say, when I look at, in a sense, why am I still single? I think that even though I didn't have the language that I have now to understand how purity culture was showing up in how marriage is presented to me, I think somewhere deep down I knew, like, this is not what I'm trying to do. And so I don't think there was necessarily a draw. And we are going to continue on this series because we got to get into some things. This is like our longest episode so far anyway, to really get you girls in touch with your sensuality, whatever that looks like for you. Because without that, I think it gravely hinders your ability to be able to connect with a man. And I think that men are looking for that and don't know how to express that. So anyways, in addition to that, I also want you to check out Sheila Gregoire's website, which is baremarriage.com. And she has a lot of resources where you can go and look at the synopsis of different books and see why she disagrees with their stance on certain things, as well as resources for married couples, and things of that nature. It's really good. Go check her out. And also, don't forget to check out my latest digital release, 6 Steps to 6 Figures. Check out the link wherever you are listening or watching this podcast. If you're watching us on YouTube, subscribe to us. leave us a 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, Audible, everywhere that you can think to get a podcast. iHeart, everywhere. We are over there. Leave us a 5-star review. If you don't have 5 stars for us, don't do it. But anyways, I'll see you on the next episode of the Somebody Should Have Told Me podcast. I have been your host, Majisty Dennis, and this is our first installment of the series, Surviving Purity Culture.